Hello, good evening, folks, and welcome to Motormouth and welcome to 2026. Because the last time we saw some of you, if you attended our Christmas one, I had my Mrs. Claus outfit on and Graham did his Christmas jumper. So we're looking a little bit more like January itself, a little bit more sober and perhaps a little bit more boring today.
Well, we'll do our best.
We'll do our best to liven this topic up. So just allowing people the time to log on and make sure they can see and hear us. For those of you who've already joined us and are au fait with how Zoom works, could you let us know by the use of your emojis? I don't care which emoji it is, just give us an emoji to make sure we know that you can see and you can hear us. Well done. We've got you all very well
Oh,
trained
look,
by this point. I like the party one. That
yeah,
implies a level of
I'm
excitement.
into the love. I'm
The
into the
laugh.
love.
Oh, great. Thank you, guys. So, um, usual rules apply, not so much rules, but guidelines. If you have a question as we're going through the discussion tonight, pop that in the questions box in the toolbar. If you want to chat amongst yourselves, leave comment, share viewpoints, pop that in the chat. We will dance between the two, but if you've got a burning question you want to ask us, we're going to be giving more priority to the questions. And we'll pick up on the chat later on. So let us know. If you're also having any problems as the evening goes on with sound, vision, you've missed a point, you want us to go back and reiterate it, or just pop that in the chat and we will have a look at that. And I'll pop something in the chat now to make sure that you all know that I am here and that you can see me. I'll just say hi to you all. So without further ado, I suppose we should introduce ourselves and that shouldn't be so arrogant that everybody knows who we all are. I am Carly Brookfield. I'm Chief Executive of DIA Group. We're going to talk about developing a training business today. I suppose I have the experience of owning and operating a training group, of running a training business, as well as other small to medium sized businesses. So I'm going to be approaching it from that perspective tonight. But I'm actually going to be bowing in a lot more ways to my colleagues here and you guys who are far more experienced in running an actual driver or rider training business at the coalface. And with me tonight to have that discussion is our regular co-presenter, Graham Hooper.
Good
Graham, do you
evening.
want to give a bit of preamble about yourself as if people
Yeah,
didn't
just a
know you
little. I
already?
mean, been an ADI 30 years. I've run several companies on the way. So I've run companies. I'm now an independent consultant. If I put my teeth in, it helps. And so I've got lots of experience as an individual and running businesses to bring to the table today. And it's got to be something of I've remembered in 30 years. We will see.
We'll extract some use from you in some
Yeah.
way tonight, I suspect. And we're also joined by Mark Jaffe, who is not only our chief motorcycling examiner and the absolute expert within our organisation on all things rider training and represents us at, all the way up to government level on these matters. He's also, the head of one of the biggest motorcycling organisations in the UK and ATBs. Mark, would you like to give a much better introduction to yourself than I just have?
Yeah, thank you very much, Carly. Yes, as I say, my name's Mark, and I represent the DIA on the motorcycling side. From a business point of view, I have started and run the largest motorcycle training organisation in the UK. We've got 23 centres throughout the UK, over 100 staff delivering training to approximately 8 to 9,000 new riders every year. So it's really good. The complexities that we have within rider training are different to that you have in driver training. I also deliver a number of online courses, such as the award in education and training for the DIA, as well as a number of different indoor courses as well. So yeah, really good to see some feedback and help where I can. There is a lot of crossover between driver and rider training. Um, there are differences in the two. We in the rider training industry are a little bit more regulated than you are in driver training, but that's only to be expected. A lot of work's gone on in the last couple of weeks since the road safety strategy was released. and I'm up in Westminster tomorrow representing the DIA and other motorcycle trainers with discussions on how we can improve riders and reduce some of the road risks that we have.
Thanks, Mark. And back to me very briefly. So we're looking at swatting up on the industry and swatting up the business. And the use of the word SWOT is because we're going to look at a traditional business template that is used to help define strategy within businesses, which is the SWOT analysis. We will also, however, be referring to some other business analytical tools that are quite useful. All sounds very off-putting and very complex, but actually me, Mark, and Graham find ourselves using these core tools quite a lot, whether we write them on the back of a fag packet or we do them properly. And the reason we use them is they're very sensible and pragmatic, but they're also very quick to do once you get into the mode of understanding what the templates are. So that's why tonight is going to be a little bit like our usual Motormouth, which is way more opinion led and discursive than perhaps our webinars are, but it's going to err into a little bit of our webinar territory because it's going to be slightly instructional and educational as well. So it's a bit of a mash-up between our webinars and the traditional Motormouth tonight. We're going to be debating things like the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats within our industry at the moment and where we think things will develop in the future, and how you can apply that thinking to your own business as well. But towards the end of the session, we're also going to look at, in a very defined way, how the road safety strategy itself has got, SWOT in it. It's got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which will in turn impact your own businesses. And in my background, not just as an owner operator of DIA, but several other companies in completely different industries and an investor in private businesses, you do end up using these tools, not just when you're running the business, but also when you're looking at whether you want to invest in them in the first place. So these are tools that have some grounding in real life business in other sectors. We're not just telling you to use these very academic looking things because we think they are nice things to do. I think some of these are need things to do as well, to really sit down at some point during your business year and look at where are you? Where do you want to go? Are you capable of getting there? Have you got what you need to get there? Should you even go there? And how are you going to get there? What's it going to take? So these are some of the tools which will help you do that analysis and plan your next roadmap, your next journey into the future, and understanding what's happening in the wider world of driver education and rider education and road safety and how that impacts your business and the wider world of motoring and automated vehicle technology, all those kind of things, how that will help plan for you in your business as well. So without further ado, let's just skip to the first slide where, hands up, are most people comfortable and familiar with the SWOT analysis as a tool? Yeah, I think most people are. If you're not, I'm going to teach grandma to suck eggs slightly because I've just done my 15-year-old daughter's parents' evening. And one of the key pieces of feedback that teachers were saying is she has the intelligence, she has the ability, she's just sometimes afraid to ask what she thinks is a stupid question. And there are no stupid questions. And we want her to say when she doesn't immediately get something like a concept. So I'm going to explain it because I think sometimes there are people who don't necessarily know what a tool is and what it stands for and how it can be useful to you. And sitting in silence doesn't necessarily help your development. So the SWOT tool is basically
just a pause, Carly. Are we emailing this out
yes
as a PDF?
Yeah, there's only this selection of slides I'm going to show you. There's only about 2 or 3. Is taken from another course that we do called the Business Bootcamp, where we look at all the fundamentals that should be in the foundation and in the pillars of your business to help structure it properly for growth. So we look at these tools and things like how to write a business plan. So this I've extracted from that fuller course, and I'll share these slides, but you can also benefit from that whole course as well and the presentation. So I'll definitely send these slides out.
And one more thing, Carly, can you just check to make sure that the chat is not just set to hosts and panelists?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think so. I think I've got it set to everyone now.
Good, excellent.
On my screen, I've got it set for everyone.
Brilliant.
So it should be okay.
So hopefully, Chris, that's answered your question.
But Chris Benstead, if you aren't getting enough attention in the chat, hop over to Q&A and we will pick up whatever you want. And that goes for everybody else. If we're not noticing what you're saying in the chat for any reason, pop it in Q&A as well, and we'll make sure that one of us, whoever's not talking, is monitoring the chat and the Q&A. One of us will pick that up for us. Okay, so belt and braces. So the SWOT, it is an analytical tool that looks at, in a very simple way, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within either an industry, a service sector, or it can even be as singular as with a product. You could even apply it to yourself as a person. And in human resources terms, sometimes when hiring or firing, you will actually look at a person with a SWOT when you're trying to decide what you should do in terms of their development. Are they walking out the door? Are you going to invest in them more? Are you going to hire them in the first place? So you can actually apply a lot of these tools that we're going to talk through tonight to not just a whole industry or a company. You could apply it to a product line, a service, or as I said, a team or a team member. So they're useful in that degree. And I've used them, and I'm sure Mark and Graham have in various different guises. This here is just an example about how you would apply a SWOT to the driver training industry. And it hasn't got all the strengths, weakness, and opportunities and threats on it. These are just talking points to get the conversation started when we look at a SWOT in terms of driver and rider training. SWOT stands for what's on there. It looks at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that are out there. And it's a really good navel gazing exercise that has to be done honestly to understand what the risks and challenges are to your business or to an industry. But on the more positive side, what are the opportunities? Can't think of a better word than that, than opportunities. And what are the strengths that you can capitalize on to reap those opportunities? So, what have you got to shore up your business against in terms of the risks? What weaknesses have you got to get on top of to make sure your business can, thrive and survive and thrive? But where can you actually grow your business because of your strengths, and where is there opportunity to grow? Anything you guys wanted to add from your experience in terms of using SWOT or talking to other people about the use of SWOT within a business that you think would be helpful?
Well, one of the things that I find quite useful is just to brainstorm things in terms of threats. Get a group of people together and just try and work something out. One of the other things that's useful is feedback. Is getting watching what your feedback comes in, whether it's through Google reviews or Trustpilot or just simple emails. That will also give you a number of clues as well, not only for the weaknesses bit, but for the threats as well. And by looking at those in a positive light, you can turn them into opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's good. That's a good analogy. So in this sense, we've started with the strengths. So let's start on a positive. And I put in there that I've related this to a typical sole trader ADI business, predominantly teaching the 17 to 25-year-old market. We can look at this in different contexts depending on what people do. This is a template for you to understand the concept of and apply to your business and what you do. What's in that template.
Can I
It will
just
be
pause
aligned.
again, Carly? Can you check in the chat? Because I've been speaking to the people in there, and it's all set to host and panelists, and they can't seem to change it. I can change it to everyone on
I
mine
can change it to everyone. Yeah.
by clicking on the blue drop down button. They don't seem to have a blue drop down button. That's what they're telling me.
We can see what you guys are putting into the chat. Is the problem that they can't see
I know
what
someone's
other
gone,
people?
hi, it's working now.
Yeah.
I think what they're trying to do is to talk to people not just via the host and panelists, but I think they're wanting to talk directly to other people on the webinar.
Right. Okay. Towards the end, we will open up the mic so people can talk live on the webinar. But we start off with the chat in the chat so we can set the concepts of the conversation rolling, and then we'll open it up wider. But I have just done the archetypal thing that IT departments tell you to do, and of switching something on and switching something off. I've just switched it back to host and panelists and switched it back to everyone. And the moment I did that, people started saying that they could see it again. So I've switched it on, switched it off, and that's fixed it.
That fixes everything.
Yeah, exactly. So I have based this one on a ADI business of the typical, what the public perceives it to be, sole trader, teaching 17 to 25-year-olds. You must apply this to your specific business and play around with it. There's no wrong or right answers in this. It's about you doing this examination of your business and the environment that you work in. You can also do this on the back of a fag packet. You don't need to have it on a PowerPoint, on a Word document. I've got nearly 30 years now under my belt of strategic change management, business development, marketing communications, and everything from international investment banking to medical indemnity. I'm telling you now, no board that I work with and me as an investor when I'm pitched to sits there and reads a business plan that's 50 pages. You want something that's quite succinct and gets to the point very quickly. And in your own world, getting this out and using it and regularly reviewing it and actually doing something with the results of it, you don't want it to be onerous. You don't want it to be war and peace. So keep it simple and what works for you. A little bit like if you do mind mapping with your students, keep it to a 1 or 2 pager kind of thing. So,
can I just add that if I was doing this, I would start with my end in mind, what I want to achieve, because otherwise it can grow too big. What do I specifically want to achieve in my business? Say growth 20%, or for example.
However, the caveat I'm going to put on that is what will come out of this is perhaps what you want to achieve is not achievable, but something else is achievable. So keeping an open mind. Absolutely go into it with your objectives. Go into it with what you think your business is now, but you might find yourself challenged through these processes and find yourself at the end of it going, actually, my core business is not this in the future. It's going to be this. And what I thought was my objective is going to have to change. Yeah. And you are going to have to also be able to interrogate your own data within your own company, and particularly your financial data, to do this exercise. I can't do that for you. I could sit down if I was coaching you and do that, because you've been more willing to share your close and personal financial information with me about sales and revenue and costs to acquire that sale, all that kind of thing. But that you've got to navel gaze at that stuff as well to know whether you've got strengths and weaknesses. Because when I sit down, and I don't know whether you guys do this with people, they'll often tell me what their strongest business lines are, or where they make their money, or what their top sellers are. But then if you go and look at their cost to acquire that business and the revenue that they actually make and the effort that they have to put in, what they think is the top seller is not necessarily the most lucrative thing for their business, and not long term either. There's things that are going to impact that. Some of the stuff they actually don't necessarily think is the cash cow could be an even bigger cash cow for them. And it's only getting down and dirty into the weeds of the business and the data that you realize where your real strengths are. So, you must do your own, homework, interrogating your own figures about your business and how it ebbs and flows. Yeah. So based on this kind of person that we're looking at, sole trader business, some of the strengths that I would identify in a typical business are things like having a good local presence, having a good referral network, whether you agree with it or not, being a grade A instructor. What are the strengths, Mark, Graham, and the assembled delegates on the chat tonight? What are the strengths do you feel are, pretty typical in a good driver or rider training business? What should be in that strengths quadrant for most businesses?
Well, I think this, and I think when you do this, they always counteract each other. So a strength to take action, because you can procrastinate on it forever. Weakness, jump in too soon and not be ready. Opportunity, actually, this is a really good idea and I think it will expand my business. Threats, actually, if I go back to jumping in too soon, I might not be ready and I destroy it in the first place. So they're the sort of things, because it's just about playing with your mind, isn't it? And getting it out there so that you can see it more clearly.
It's also, though, a little bit of a stock inventory, as in it's looking at what you've already got in the pot and seeing what's the good stuff in there, what's the stuff that you perhaps want to shore up and add more to, what doesn't need any extra salt. I'm mixing my analogies now. I'm aware.
Mm.
What could you harness and do better, and what's actually going to come into the environment and completely knock everything out of kilter if you're not careful and you don't mitigate those risks. So there is an element of taking stock of what the existing business and customer base is, the environment around it, as well as your own attitudes and actions as well. So I agree with you. I think, but it's a blend of what else is happening within your business. Mark, is there anything that you would add to what people should be putting into this category on strengths? What should they perceive to be their strengths as a trainer and put into that box?
I think you need to understand what sort of person you are, in terms of making sure that you've got the right personal skills. That is very much a strength, and a lot of this comes down to not necessarily understanding what you do well, but if you go through some more formal teacher training processes, um, you might not learn a massive amount, but what it might do for you is it might actually reinforce what you're doing is actually right. And if we can understand that what we're doing is right, then that can only be a really good thing, and that can be seen as a strength, most definitely. Making sure that we deliver, have good communications. Again, that's another strength. One of the complaints that I often get spoken about from other people within the industry is not responding to people in a satisfactory way, and that's definitely one of the weaknesses. But maybe part of strengths, we can also look at the use of AI as well, and how AI can help us generate responses to certain issues. Because if you can respond to people quickly, it gives you an opportunity to be able to get more business out of those people, because they think that you're actually care about what you do. How you achieve that in terms of using AI is a different way. You've got to be a little bit careful, of course, that you don't come up with some things like like the West Midlands Police have done today in terms of setting their objectives for that football match using AI. But yeah, if you use it properly, it's definitely an opportunity to do that. And the more mobile AI gets, the better it gets, the more we can use that to adjust our lessons as we go. So yeah, just think about what your skills are and try and improve on those. If all you're doing is reaffirming that you're doing something right, that's a good point.
Well,
Can
gold
I
stars to
just
you
go to the
guys.
chat?
That's
Just
what I was about to do. I was about to say gold stars to you two, but also gold stars to people in the chat, because somebody's encapsulated it just as I was about to for you, but you guys got it already. Your strengths really is about your USPs and your skills, and it is basically about what do you not just do better than competitors, but what do you do differently that competitors don't offer? What gaps can you fill that local or national competitors can't do? That can be your strength. So it can be about the level of your offering is stronger than somebody else's, the qualifications you have, the way you offer it, the value that you add to it. And I'm talking about not your value as in what we call value add. You offer more than just a driving lesson. You add e-learning alongside it. That is your strength. Um, and it's also about, what you're harnessing to offer more. So that could be, as you've just discussed, it could be offering stuff that is using technology, like offering supplementary e-learning, using AI. I've been saying for years that before even the advent of AI handling your calls and your messaging, even if you use an outsourced call handling service, it's better to pay somebody like that to capture your customer inquiries than you go out there and set up a brand, advertising on your car, a website, and give people the impression you're open for business. Once you've created that massive fishing net to pick up all those new little fishy customers, if you don't have an adequate call management system and somebody capturing the inquiries and doing something with them and going back to the customer, it's like cutting a massive hole in the bottom of that net. You've gone and captured a lot of customers, then you let them swim out.
And people won't wait. So
No,
people won't wait if they ring somebody to say, I want some driving lessons or I want some riding lessons, and it goes to voicemail. They don't bother
move
responding.
on.
What they do, they go to the next one on the list, and they'll
Yeah.
go to the next one on the list. So getting call handlers involved.
Yeah.
Absolutely really matters, and there's plenty of companies now offering this, and I think it's a massive thing because what
And AI is already doing it. You know,
yeah, absolutely.
you don't even need to go to. We might hate the advancement of technology in some respects, and it can be seen to be a threat, but it's also a massive opportunity because where you would have actually had to historically outsource, and I've had to do this on a lot of campaigns or for a lot of companies, is pay money to not for DIA but for other companies a human outsourced call center program, you can now start in-housing that with the use of AI tools that will replicate that. Yeah, and it's
You
not
can just put a
perfect.
chat bot on
Yeah,
your website who will learn to answer all the
yeah.
questions that are
And
going to be asked.
these are kind of micro ideas in the kind of macro of strengths. But
And you can create an avatar as well, so it looks like it's in person to answer those questions as
yeah,
well.
and
It's all available. Can I just go to the chat because
yeah,
people
sure.
say they can't see the chat, so I'm going to have to read um, out. So someone's just gone. I think WhatsApp has a tool like that.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
WhatsApp does, yeah.
skills such as sign language, kinesthetic teaching, etc.
Again, that's your strength and your
Yeah.
differentiator in the market that you have skills that other people in your area haven't got, and you are a and you know marketing those strengths and making sure people are aware of them and why they are a strength is really important. So SWOT's good for identifying you've got that strength, and it's then am I making sure everybody is aware of my strength is an often a disconnect that businesses can have. They think everybody knows what they do, what we call provider-led marketing. I think I've already got the messaging out there and people are completely aware, but you want to make sure that that's what people realize is a strength in your business. And it sounds slightly unethical, but having a higher level of customer service some people might value more so than you being the best trainer in the world. That will win more. That will be a strength for that business because they'll win more business, or they're better at marketing is their strength. They might not be the best trainer, as some would argue about some of the national franchises, but they've got more marketing strength. They've got more
Absolutely.
marketing power. That's their strength. So it's
And if the industry goes for a downturn, the ones with the superior marketing will win. Flexible diary and working hours, adaptability, good at reading body language, standard of latest tech in the vehicle.
the vehicle itself.
Calm,
I
preferably
know.
experienced with neurodivergence. Yes,
Yeah.
the vehicle itself
In a,
is
in
a
a in a
USP.
young driver market, I know that some of the guys who have the flashier cars, it's their marketing tool. Some might think it's inappropriate to have that, BMW 3 Series that looks all souped up, but they actually use it as the marketing tool to gain the young market in there.
Okay, so Chris Bedstead's in, yeah, and I think we will. If we go to Pessel, it might answer his question. Are we at
Okay.
risk of using SWOT as a comfort exercise for individual businesses while avoiding the uncomfortable truth that some of the biggest threats to ADIs are systematic and outside their control? And if so, what's the collective strategy when adapt better isn't enough?
If as long as you register it in your threats that is a problem, whether it's DVSA
That's the
instructor
point, yeah.
availability, test availability, the introduction of GDL, the consultation that's out at the moment on the on everything there. As long as you put it in the threats box and you understand that those threats occur, what you can then do is come to people like the DIA and say, right, we have this threat to my business. Can you help me with that? And that can then change into an opportunity. But if you haven't actually recorded it in the first place as a threat, then you've got to, it's highlighting it for you, isn't it? It's going back to putting it in paper. It's not a thought in your head. You've written it down. Yes, I sort of agree with what you're saying, Chris, but let's use it as an opportunity to actually do something.
He's got another one now. He
Of
says,
course, yeah.
I know Graham hates this. Uh, be a grade 6 instructor with a grade 4 personality, having both technical strengths and interpersonal skills. I just don't like it, Chris. Be a human being with great skills. Be the best version of you can be in all categories. Nothing to do with grade 6 or grade 4, mate. I just don't. Not. He's right. I don't like it. I don't hate it, but I don't like it because why would I want to be a grade 4 personality?
Well, listen, on that point and moving towards that side of the matrix, it's not a comfort blanket if you are honestly focusing on the weaknesses and the threats. It would be a comfort blanket if you looked at strengths and opportunities only. Now, I can't help people who will use it as a comfort blanket and only record things in their strengths and opportunities and disregard the weaknesses and the threats. That is their weakness and that is their threat if they approach a SWOT like that. Um, if you work as a consultant with a business, it's your job to actually invariably end up focusing on the weaknesses and the threats a lot more. And I actually spend more my time more so thinking about the negatives in the industry and within our own organization. That I'm a fairly positive person, but I actually worry more about the weaknesses and threats. How can we do more? How can we mitigate that risk? How can we shore up that weakness? How can we turn it into a strength? All those kind of things. So I can't do anything about the individual who chooses to use this tool in a wildly optimistic and unrealistic way. I can only advise you that you're doing yourself a disservice, not you, Chris. I take your point, but I can only advise you that people who use it as a comfort blanket will ultimately fail in their ambitions because they're not being honest about the risks and the threats, and they're not working to mitigate those. So, and they're not doing anything about the weaknesses that will then damage the strengths of their business and, undermine the opportunities in their business as well. So we will go on to some other tools, but I'm telling you now, from running large businesses and small businesses, investing in large and small businesses, and consulting for large and small businesses, that you can use whatever templates you want to get there, but honest evaluation is the only way to make the honest gains in your business. So and we can all take an MBA, and let's face it, most of the MBA graduates that I've hired have not necessarily been the most practical because they're very focused on the theoretical. But it's about having that honest look at your business. And I actually, in some ways, don't care which matrix or template you use. It's just about having that honest evaluation of what's happening right now in your business, where it is, how does it prosper, where does it not prosper, where's it going to prosper and not prosper in the future, and how am I going to develop for that reason. And that sometimes could lead you to be doing something wildly different to what you do now, because that analysis makes you realize your opportunity is not in that linear carrying on doing what you're doing. It's actually divesting or investing somewhere else and doing something and diversifying your business into another sector. For example, you might be thinking now, if you're thinking 10, 20, 30 years ahead, I need to gen up on training in automated vehicles because there is going to be a training need. Even if the vehicle isn't driven by a driver, there's going to be some kind of training need. And I want to be at the zeitgeist moment with that, ready to go when there is more demand for that kind of training. So yeah, don't use it as a comfort blanket and don't perceive it as one would be my advice. Use it as that very honest evaluation of what you're facing as a business. So looking at weaknesses, some of the weaknesses that this is quite a while since I did this is when I first came into the industry. There was a weakness then that people didn't have an online presence. Listen, love, I've got 30 years under my belt. I would be constantly told, my diary is full. It's all done on word of mouth. I don't have to do any other marketing. And I can do a northern accent because I am actually a northerner at heart. So I wasn't ripping off a northern accent.
I don't think that's changed much. Someone told me they were at a large conference with about 150 people there, and they asked the question, who's got a website? And only about 25% of the audience did have.
Yeah. And it's not just about a website. It's about having...
But it's that presence,
Yeah. It's about having more marketing channels at your disposal, which is easier than ever. I'll tell you that as a professional marketer, it's easier than ever in this age of technology. And it's more commoditized and attainable to have a lot of tools for marketing than it ever was. You have to pay for less marketing tools now than when I started out over 30 years ago. And people who just rely on one channel of marketing, that is a weakness. Because if that channel is damaged, you can lose business overnight and in a big way. And I'll tell you how that works in terms of referral, relying purely on referrals and your local reputation. If for some reason your reputation is damaged locally overnight and you've relied solely on that referral mechanism or that reputation being the thing that speaks for you and fill your diary, and you have access to no other marketing channels to reach customers and set the expectation of what your business is and what it's like, you are quite frankly, and that I see that time and time again because obviously I do the representation of members in investigations for misconduct and then on to tribunals and appeals. And you can see the disbelief on somebody's face that even though we've helped them and they weren't found guilty because they weren't guilty, the reputational damage has really damaged that strength that they felt they had, and they had to start from ground zero repositioning and marketing their business again, and they don't know how to do it because they've only ever relied on one form of marketing their business and one channel and vehicle. So it could be that the weakness is not just an online presence, but no other forms of marketing, and getting your name out there and what you do, or communicating what you do and your strengths, than the way that you've always done it. And if there's a problem in that, how do you switch? How do you pivot to doing something differently? So, and it is, I'll go back to what Graham just said as well, just touching on why lack of digital presence, online presence is important. The impatient younger generation of parent and pupil, although a website could be set up overnight and is not a shop front in terms of a solid thing, the consumer thinks it's a shop front. We all know someone can set up a website and it could be a scam. But the consumer generally takes the presence of a website, meaning you are a more solid business than somebody who doesn't have any web presence whatsoever. And the problem as well is if you're not in that world and they can't find you, they start to mistrust that you actually exist and are real. And then if they can't find reviews about you or dropped a Google pin in the map, they're starting to think, does this business actually exist? I can't find out any information about it online. And that's where predominantly people are searching for that information. And then they get impatient and go, well, I'll just move to the next guy. And the next guy might have an amazing website, but they're a rubbish trainer, but they're just better at marketing. And that is their strength. And they're, capitalizing on your weakness, that impatient consumer has just moved to the most easily available and reachable provider who looks like they actually exist. So that whole lack of a website could be an issue in itself, but also a lack of more than one marketing channel and an ability to reach a wider audience could be a weakness as well.
Okay. It's also, if you've got a website, it's also, you also need to keep the content updated, because the Google bots will just check to make sure to see how long it is. And you don't have to do a lot. All you need to do is to set up maybe a blog and just write some words on a blog or something and keep it updated. So it's no point just having one and doing nothing with it. I get very frustrated when I see go onto websites and find that they're still saying our Christmas opening hours are this. Well, what do you mean? You haven't even changed it. You're now the 15th of January. That's just a silly example. So it's not just about that.
Out-of-date information makes you, out-of-date information makes you look like an out-of-date provider.
Correct, exactly.
And that you haven't updated your website for a while. Are they still in business? Are they still active?
Mm-hmm.
And think about this in terms of you are a consumer too. What makes you want to engage with a business on or offline? What makes you trust a business? What makes you mistrust a business on or offline? And think about those factors and then use those feelings and apply them to your own business as well. And that could be a hotel, a restaurant, a car dealer, a pub, whatever it is that you are consuming on a regular basis. Think about your own reactions to that as a consumer, and then understand what your customer is reacting to within your business positively.
I think also you need to think about demographics in your business. Who are your customers? Well, where will they be? So, for example, young people are going to be on TikTok. Google owns YouTube. So if you want to get searches, YouTube. If you're in the instructor market, Facebook, and general run-of-the-mill adults are on Instagram. I'm just making this up as I go along.
No,
You need
the
to.
stats bear that out. The 40-something age bracket is, well, 50-something age bracket increasingly is predominantly more on Facebook. The youngsters aren't really on there.
Yeah,
Instagram tends to be the 30-somethings to the 50-somethings age bracket. That's getting older in terms of its predominant profile of user. And obviously, younger people are Snapchat and TikTok. They will use Insta, and Insta Reels being reinvented and marketing better has swayed some younger people back from TikTok. But you might not like being there and you might not like doing that. But if you want customers and they are there, you're going to have to go and do things that you don't like doing to get those customers because you want their business. You like
absolutely.
their money, you're going to have to like where they are and where they want to be
And
communicating.
then we have supply and demand, and people say, "Oh, I don't need to advertise. I've got plenty of demand." Well, in some respects, the more demand you have, probably the higher price you can charge. Because if it's outstripped, I mean, demand at the moment is that my demand is outstripping me. So I need to consider whether I'm going to lower that demand by rising up my prices.
Hmm.
Because I'm a one person, I can only handle one bit of business. So do I put my prices up because demand is very high? I
And
can
you
always
can
bring them down again if
And
I
you can
want to.
put price into this matrix. You can do a SWOT on pricing alone. It
Yep,
can be people think, oh God, I've got to apply this damn thing to my entire business. If you want to apply it to just one aspect of what you're doing, you can do that, right? And you can say the strength of my pricing is it's competitive, it's not too much that it's putting people off and they won't engage with me, but it values me for what I actually do and my quality, and it covers my cost. My weakness is I'm still working more hours than I want to per week. I want to get that precious resource of time back in my life. And with the rising cost of living and inflation, I am actually only just starting to scrape covering my costs and make a decent enough profit. So I need to look at that. And in my threats are certainly economic factors, particularly fiscal, in a government that doesn't particularly like small businesses by the looks of it. So, your pricing could be affected by threats, your own internal weaknesses, but maybe you haven't adjusted your price is a weakness, and the threat could be that you're going to need to adjust that price if cost of living is going to get harsher for small businesses if we don't get a U-turn on some of these small business taxes that are being threatened. And that's one of the threats, isn't it, of the fiscal policy that we currently have. So, you can apply this to different problems you're looking at rather than thinking you have to go all in on your entire business in one shot.
Just one other thing on marketing as well. One of my really, really big hates is the use of at hotmail.com or at outlook.com. When you've got a business name, you've got a website, which is www.imthebesttrainerintheworld.co.uk. And then you contact me by fred at
Yeah.
hotmail.com.
Yeah.
Let's get professionalism. Yeah, get your email address with your business name or your website URL on it rather than at hotmail.com because
Yeah,
it
again, it's that
really
trust
does.
issue, isn't it?
Totally agreed.
Are you actually a real business? Or are you just playing around at this?
Yeah,
And some people say
correct.
to me, not in this sector, but in other sectors, oh, it's a lifestyle business. I'm sorry, that's BS. You're either running a business or you're not running a business. If you don't run a business around what just you want to do and expect it to thrive forever, because customers are wanting you to do something for them when they want to do it, and that might not fit in with your lifestyle
Mm.
necessarily. So,
can I just say something about the email? I don't disagree with you, Mark, but I have got Graham Hooper ADI at hotmail.com. And the reason I've got that is because I say to people, that's my personal email address. Email me there because it's where I know I definitely will receive your email.
But I also know what
But
your age group is going to be. The fact that you're still using Hotmail, and I'm
I
not a youngster either.
absolutely, and I
But
don't disagree with what you said about having a business email, but they keep getting junked. Yeah, when people email me from their businesses, they keep getting junked, and it's a real problem because I find the people stuff from the businesses in my junk mail.
yeah,
It's so I don't know whether that's Outlook for you or not. I
but
don't disagree. I think if you're going to be a big business, then you need not to be Mark Jaffe to Yahoo or
Mm.
me or whatever. You need to be at your business.
but
Yeah.
the technology you use for marketing or to run your business can either be a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat. Yeah. So really examine the technology you use, the marketing you use, the vehicles and the channels of marketing, the channels being how what you send your messaging and your marketing down, the vehicle being the thing that you send it on, whether that's an emailer, your website, the channel is, the audience, the way that you get it to the audience, the vehicle is the thing you send it on, the mailer, the website. Have a look at all of those things and analyze them against these four factors here. One of moving to opportunities from weaknesses there. We're looking at again, and the things counteract each other. We look at things like technology to be a great opportunity because AI can help us run our businesses more efficiently. It effectively, in some businesses, gives us people that we don't have to pay a lot for and do the job very, very quickly without moaning. That's an
It can't
opportunity.
spell though. I thought I couldn't spell. The damn thing took about 15 attempts to spell
Yeah.
headquarters this
Yeah.
morning.
And I know people will say the threat of technology in our sector is AV. However, I don't. One of the saving graces of the driver training industry is I don't think you're as at risk of the threat of AI being something that will replace you as other industries. For example, I wouldn't want to be a young marketeer starting out now, and certainly not somebody who wanted to work in a niche area of marketing like a social media manager, because quite frankly, your role won't exist. AI will be doing it. And we may even have influencers who are AI in the future because they'll cost a lot less than a human being and they won't be quite so troublesome and employers will naturally switch. So, I don't see AI as a massive threat to our industry. I think it's actually a set of
It's a
tools you can
strength.
harness. However, AV, automated vehicles, is both a threat, but it's also an opportunity because I do believe that training will still be needed to make them legal compliant and mitigate the risks. But it'll just be a different form of training. And we as an industry need to look at now what should that be and start voicing what that should be and why government should be thinking about it.
And be educated in it. Be the first. Know the most. Then you'll be in demand when it happens. You can see the future. You look at what we're talking about now, AI and AV. You can see the future. Start learning it now.
Yeah. And I think, so I think technology is an important thing to think about in this. I think the change in our consumers and how they react to learning to drive will be important. So a threat, for example, you can see there is the perceived rising cost of learning to drive. And the current situation with test supply is making some young people apparently think about whether they want to learn to drive at all. And a big agenda from government to improve public transport and the way that people may not even have to commute because of remote working is making people consider it. So that leads you to think, well, okay, that is a threat. So what's the opportunity that I could look at with that? So maybe I'm going to need to look at diversification, diversifying what, where, and who I teach, and being overly reliant on one market segment or one customer segment, like learners, in a marketplace where there's more and more people coming in at the moment, flooding in to teach those learners. And after the test demand curve drops off, there'll actually be less supply of customers, and that will continue to happen as consumers change their behavior. Is there another marketplace, another market segment that you need to be thinking about diversifying into now to help protect your business for the future and sustain it, but also give you some additional income, diversifying to give you additional income in new market segments, but also give you some level of different diversification of interest in what you do, not doing the same type of customer who's working towards the same goal. I know you have variety in the customers that you do have, a lot of you, but some of you don't. They see the same old, same old. Having diversification in the type of market you work in and the type of customer you work with can add another benefit to you as well in terms of motivational factors.
So
So
in rider training, we've actually taken that ADI threat of rising costs and test
yeah,
availability, and we've created an opportunity to get people on power two wheelers while they're waiting for a driving test, and we've seen an increase of youngsters moving towards motorcycling, which is our opportunity from the threat posed to the ADIs from test availability and rising costs.
yeah. So it's all about, that being reactive, but also being proactive and understanding what's happening outside in the macro environment, not just in the wider industry, but in the wider world, and what's going to impact that, and the decisions that the people I need to pay me money are going to make. And we'll talk about how do you make that analysis of what's going to change in the macro environment in a moment, and applying that to the micro environment, which is my business, and understanding what the advantages, disadvantages, threats, risks, all of those kind of things are.
Mark, what you need to do is change the weather, because if you change the weather, then motorcyclists will go boom like the rest of the world where it's warm.
Well,
We don't want motorcyclists going boom.
if you take global warming, no, sorry, climate change, I think we're going that way in any case.
Okay, which is good.
So,
because also you've got the proliferation, haven't you, of like Uber Eats and that sort of stuff as well.
But we're
seeing jet pilots.
Yeah, we're seeing some of that as a threat, and that is sat in my threats box, in my SWOT analysis, because what we're seeing is less delivery and end of mile deliveries. When we came out of COVID, massive boom in end of mile deliveries. You could get an onion, couldn't you, for threepence halfpenny, delivered to your door within 10 minutes. That has definitely gone as we've taken it in. So definitely things like that. But you're right there, Graham. Let's increase the weather to the south of France weather, and we'll get way more motorcyclists in.
So
I think the other thing, Carly, I'm just thinking about deliveries. Big delivery companies are shifting to electric vehicles.
Yeah, and so electric vehicles could be an opportunity for you, and it could be an automatic. If you're manual, could be the opportunity, but also the threat, because there's an increase in terms of consumer trends. Sorry to keep talking about consumers, but that's the marketeer. But in learner trends, that the demand is increasing for automatic. So that is going to be a threat to you, and it's a weakness if you don't offer it. Now, I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying, in harsh terms, that's what you've got to think about. Where are my gaps? Where are my weaknesses? Where are my risks for the future? And that's where we're using the SWOT to try and identify and pull out those. Some people might be sitting there on the laurels right now thinking, well, I've actually got a good website presence. I've got the right vehicle. I've got the right this. I've got right that. But how can you do more? So, for example, you might have the website, but do you have an e-learning approach so you can value add to your pupils through learning outside of the car? That's the thing for you to work on, rather than use it, as Chris suggests, as a comfort blanket. You actually should be putting stuff, even if you've got a good online presence, you're doing Facebook, you're doing Snapchat, you will have some weaknesses in there somewhere, and there are opportunities to develop that will be able to be turned into strengths of your business.
And I'm just thinking about the threat and automatics. Automatics used to be a premium price for driving lessons. However, as that market grows, it will no longer become a premium price, because there'll be more and more automatic driving instructors. However, what could happen is that the traditional manual could then rise in price, because there'll be less demand, less driving instructors with it.
Yeah.
So, things swing around.
So there are some other analytical tools that you can use within your business as well. And again, they're not just nice things that big consultancy groups like BCG, you can see on the right there, which is Boston Consulting Group, who originally came up with the BCG matrix. And weirdly, this is probably the matrix I use the most in my own business, and also when I'm looking at investments or consulting with either individual members at DIA who ring me and say, I want to sit down with you for an hour or so and talk about my business, or larger organizations. So I'll talk about that one in a moment, but I'm just going to go to the pestle analysis, because I think there is a good link here between the SWOT and also what's the road safety strategy, bringing that one in all in one bundle there. So the pestle analysis is a analytical tool that again looks at that macro environment, the wider world, and factors within that wider world, and how are they going to impact my business. So you don't just exist in a vacuum. None of us do. We might be an independent ADI with a small sole trader business with my group of customers in this part of the UK, and I'm happy with that. I'm really glad you're happy with that, but unfortunately, other things can come in and interfere, even with your own business that you think you run and you have full control over. No one has full control over their business and their world. Even Jeff Bezos has to think about other external factors and how they're going to impact his business. You can say, why would he be worried? But he has things that motivate him to do more and carry on making more money. So he is going to be worried about other things that will stop him doing those things. So the pestle analysis is a tool that is designed to look at those other macro environmental factors in terms of how they're going to impact your business or an industry. So it looks at, so you can do a shorter version, which is called a PEST, and that purely looks at political, economic, social, and technological factors. A PESTLE extends to look at those four factors, but also the legal and the environmental. So, for example, what is the P? What is going to change in the political environment that is going to impact my business? Well, I'll tell you now, and this is not my political leaning at all being expressed, but the biggest change, and you could see it a mile away, is that when Labour came into power, they were going to introduce a number of fiscal policies which would be unhelpful, to say the least, to certain businesses and certain sectors and certain individuals. So that was something that you could have seen at the election, was something that in the macro environment, the political environment, the P, was going to impact certain business sectors. What perhaps some people didn't see was how far reaching that would go to the myriad small businesses that their fiscal policies have extended to on this occasion. So obviously that these things, these political factors now are impacting sole trader environment businesses, businesses like driving instruction, hairdressers, pubs, all those kind of things. So that political stuff that's happening up there is having a real and deep impact on our industry. Political decision makers, because you're government regulated, will always have an impact on your world. You can't go and apply and pay for and qualify for a license that is regulated by a government and not be affected by politics in some way, and the policies that different political parties will make when they're in power, or the combination of those parties will make in the Commons or in the Lords. So political factors are important to consider in a small business. At the moment, a political factor is the road safety strategy. That it's got a political element to it, right? So we've got to consider the impacts of that on your business. The economic can be impacted by the P, the political, and it can be impacted by world markets and world economy problems as much as it can be impacted by domestic issues. So keeping a weather eye on the economic environment and what factors impact that, like war, oil, all of those kind of things, because those things will ultimately drip down and have an impact on your business, and you have to plan and shore up the impacts. Or being positive, it can be something, positive, an opportunity that economic change presents to your business as well. The social is more about the consumer trends and behaviors and how people are changing, how we're changing culturally and socially. So what kind of beliefs, what kind of changes are people making in their lives, and how that's going to impact their business, your business rather, and how they will interact with you as well. So that social transition in how people approach transport, for example, and work, more remote working, less people commuting by car and bike, staying at home, not necessarily thinking about developing their driving. Technological, again, we've talked about how technology can be an opportunity for your business, but also what's happening in the technological sense that is going to be an impact on your business. So the advent of AV, the advent of AI, all of those things impacting your business, and consider the impacts that they could have on your business. It's not crazy conspiracy theory thinking about all these factors and going too deep for a small training business. These things will result in real risks or opportunities, positive and negative, for the smallest business. The macro stuff does impact the micro. The legal side of things could be obviously a change in law, legislation, policy, or regulation, and that could be ADI or rider regulation and legislation around that, or it could be something that is in the wider legislative framework in terms of how businesses are regulated and the legal structure around businesses as well. And the environmental is exactly what it sounds like in this sense. It's the environment that we actually live in. So environmental factors like the strive for people to ditch diesel and move towards electric, could be a factor that's environmental. People choosing to drive less because of environmental concerns. Environmental pressures on oil production, meaning, there's less oil to be produced because people are worried about the use of those kind of things and fossil fuels, and the switch away for that, meaning that those things get more expensive for a business to actually have, and your costs go up. So that's where we use a pestle to understand how that macro environment is going to filter down into our micro environment of running our businesses. And I think one of the things that, PESTLE is relevant at the moment is that road safety strategy. It's a political thing as well as a potentially legislative thing. It's a potentially economic thing factor as well as social to some degree. There's going to be an element of technology to some of the measures that they are suggesting in that strategy, and environmental as well. So I think it was probably a timely moment to say at the very end of this session. And as I said, there's a lot to take in tonight. I will share these slides. You can Google a lot of these things, but we also do a business boot camp that looks at using these frameworks to analyze your business and what you do with that information. I think we'd draw to a close really before we take some quick questions. What do we think in terms of a SWOT, what the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities of the road safety strategy are, and how that's going to impact our industry? What do you two gentlemen and the wider audience tonight think of the road safety strategy in terms of how it's going to impact our world?
I'll go first. I'm not completely convinced yet. I mean, it's, if I put my cynical head on, the fact that, that 6 months mandatory period, well, we've got it anyway. We can't get a test for 6 months. So is it a can't book a test by the back door, reduce the backlog? Is it, are they conning us, or is this really a road safety strategy? Because without any training, it's just 6 months. We've just raised the age. That's all. We haven't done anything. So that's I think the big one. If we get, and I think we need to urge ADIs to respond to this consultation and to have a voice, because we tend not to get listened to. And if we don't, well, they do what they like anyway. However, this is a consultation. We have to have a voice. And, I'm sure if you put it into Carly, she will be your voice and she will listen to you. However, we as individuals need to think about how it affects us. The other stuff, it's the first time for what? I can't remember now. Is it 20 years since we had a road safety strategy coming in?
2012, I think, the last
2012. One. Yeah. That was the last time we had some form of road safety strategy. That was 13 years, 14 years. So we do need one. What it's actually going to end up looking like and being, we can help shape, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, that from a rider training perspective, I think that we've got a massive opportunity to be able to really change the way rider training is delivered. My fear is that they're going to just tinker around the edges with it, and make that. If we can make motorcycling more accessible and improve the training of motorcyclists, the more motorcyclists we have on the road, the safer we'll be. At the moment, we're only 1% of the road traffic, if you take miles driven. And that's part of the problem that we have as motorcycling. And I think using the safe system approach is a really good way around it, because, one of the things that we need to do within that safe system approach and that holistic approach is do more training with car drivers to look out for motorcyclists.
Mark, I think that's a brilliant point. And also, just because you mentioned the safe systems, if ADIs haven't looked at safe systems, they should start doing so, because they won't understand the whole, because it is about the whole, the safe systems approach, and not about one piece. So it's trying to create joint up thinking. Whether it will or not will remain to be seen.
But if you've dived into some of the detail of the road safety strategy, there's a few things that have already become apparent, and I'm currently on my third draft of a letter to ministers on this subject. One glaring thing in the whole strategy is it mentions lots of other stakeholders like road traffic accident victims and their families, and it mentions other stakeholders. Even in the press release to launch it, it mentions stakeholders, some of whom have nothing to do with driver training, relatively on the ground, or rider training. But it makes very little reference to one of the most pivotal people they are going to depend upon for the delivery of many aspects of this strategy, which is the rider trainer and the driver trainer, and also the group of stakeholders who have the most experience of road safety education at the coalface. So the letter is really designed to say, great that you've launched and finally got off your backsides to get a road safety strategy out there. And great that we're going to have some discussions on that in the form of consultation. But frankly, this is an industry that doesn't necessarily trust consultations. And we're hearing that you're having conversations with lots of people who don't actually teach people to ride or drive. And we need to be in that conversation more. And you need to come and talk to us more. And if you don't, you're very foolish. And I'll tell you why. And that's what that letter is all about in very strong terms. I'm not saying, please, please come and talk to us. I'm saying, if you don't come and talk to us, you're very misguided, because these are the people who not only recognise the problems in road safety, they've actually got some really good ideas about how to resolve them, because they work with these issues every single day. They see the rider or driver as they are being developed, so they've got a better sense of that than an academic researcher who's just looking at a load of stats on a page, or sad to say this, a parent of a road safety victim, they didn't, or a fireman or a policeman, they didn't see that person learning to drive and understand their behavior and how to change it. And these people, you guys, will be the people they will depend upon to deliver the solutions that they're thinking of. So if you don't engage with these people, you won't get the right solutions, and you won't have an engaged workforce to deliver the solutions. So these conversations with this stakeholder are really important to this strategy. And we've not been given a sense, given the fact in 22,000 words of the strategy, you've even thought about driving and riding instructors, because they're not mentioned once. So that's one of my jobs, is to go and take ministers and DVSA to task, and DFT to task, on that lack of inclusion and that what we call disenfranchisement of driver and rider trainers. But I do think if you look into the detail of some of the consultations they've also already launched on things like minimum learning periods, whilst what I've just described as a threat and a weakness for sure of the road safety strategy and government thinking, there are some good opportunities in that. And in the minimum learning period alone, there's some great opportunities if we push that door wide open for ADIs and rider trainers, because it talks about not just minimum learning periods, but a modular curriculum of learner to drive, such as we designed for the Milestones project. And ADIs, and it doesn't speak about trainers, but the idea behind that is, having had conversations with DFT in the setup of Milestones, and the idea we had behind it for them to want to run with it in the first place, ADIs being a more effective gatekeeper and rider trainers being a more effective gatekeeper to licensure and the test, and them being responsible for the process of getting them to the test in a way that they've already proved to some degree their competence and safety before they go to the test centre. So I think if you look at that, and please do, because if we don't have an idea of what's going on in these consultations, the ideas they've got, and then respond to those ideas collectively and individually, our voice gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And we saw that with the booking system consultation for the, there wasn't enough, and there would never look. I made the argument to DVSA there would never have been enough ADIs answering that consultation to weigh up against the number of public stakeholders. That was always an unfair balance, and they've never given me a satisfactory answer about how they addressed that balance of the expert stakeholders being way fewer in number than the inexpert public stakeholder. However, the more of us that are responding to consultations individually, and the more we get behind the big stakeholders like ourselves that are responding, the better. Because there's some pretty interesting stuff in these consultations about ideas they're playing with to introduce a modular program of learning in that minimum learning period. It's not just about logging hours, and we're going to be very clear in our feedback. It should not just be about going and accruing a load of hours on road doing anything. It should be focused learning. How is that managed by the ADI? Is the ADI going to be part of assessing and signing off that learning, so therefore you become more instrumental than you are even now? And what else should we be adding to their thought pattern around this now? So in that sense, the road safety strategy, it could be a massive opportunity whilst they're in that thinking mode. We've just got to make sure that they hear our thoughts, not the thoughts of people who are quite removed from driver and rider training in reality.
Good. Carly, can I go back to the chat?
Yeah.
So Chris has asked a question in terms of more bikers equal safer roads for motorcyclists. Let me expand a little bit on that, if I can, Chris. Yeah, 1% of the road traffic on the road. So 99% of the time, we are not in the same places where you think we're going to be. If we were to increase that number to, let's say, 10%, what that would do is it would actually reduce the accident rate by up to 21%. I think that the survey has said or looked at, and it would actually reduce congestion by 25%. So if we can make more bikes on the road, the more likely is that drivers will see us, because we're going to be there more often.
Yeah.
The more people we've got out on the road, the more often we're there. And the other part of driver training that we need to potentially look at is try to understand why ADIs or generally learner riders don't look out, learner drivers don't look out for motorcyclists, because we're smaller than other road users. We're quicker. We can get in more spaces. We can move across the road in ways that drivers don't necessarily think about us. So the more bikers on the road will mean more safety. You look at places like Paris, Rome, where there are an awful lot more. Accidents are almost eliminated in the centre of Paris because the bikes everywhere, and car drivers look out for them because they're there more often than they are in the UK. We aren't in places that people think that they should be looking. So hopefully that's given you a little bit more.
Yeah, I think reminds me of the gorilla.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Chris. We are more stylish than car
Massage
drivers.
characteristics. We all concur with that. We all concur with that.
Inattentional blindness and the gorilla.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So I just suggest looking at some of these other tools. And you know what? You can just Google these tools and there's some really good succinct explanations. There's some really good YouTube videos. There used to be a really good website when I was doing my chartered marketing and then my MBA called Quick MBA. It's like a cheat sheet. And you could type in any particular term and it would give you a really good breakdown. But please have a look at those because it's not too highfalutin for any business to be doing this. You don't have to be working for Boston Consultant Group or McKinsey to use these tools, even if they created them in the first place. And they are stuff that is quite, once you get into the mode of using them, they're quite practical. And I'm only going to point out one in particular. I won't go through what all of them are, and we'll send this presentation around after so you can see it. I love in particular a BCG matrix because the Boston Consultant Group, because that looks either a product class, a segment, a person, or a team, and divides them up into things like what is a shooting star? It's a product or a service or an area of my business that has the ability to do really well, and it is starting to do really well, but it still needs some investment. It still needs some time, right? A cash cow is something that it just ticks over. It just keeps delivering. You stick that thing out in the field, it just keeps munching grass and producing milk. Yeah, so its yield is great and it doesn't take a lot of investment and it's got a long trajectory of carrying on like that, a long lifeline ahead of it. And bear in mind, these things can change from all these impacts from the pestle could actually change where these things are in the matrix. Question marks are products, services, people, parts of your business that could become a shooting star with investment and time and the good wind, but also could completely tank and they're a risk. So I've got to really evaluate really carefully. Do I want to, for example, diversify into that area of driver training? Because there's a lot of risks and I'm not necessarily guaranteed rewards, unlike the cash cow of what I do already that makes me my money. Dogs, this is why I love BCG. I am a dog lover. I have a border terrier, a blind border terrier who I probably love more than any other family member. So I am not advocating shooting dogs here. However, the concept of dogs in a BCG is that a dog product is something that you really should just take outside and shoot it. It is something that is sucking up either money or other resource like time and effort in your business, but it's not producing anything. Either it's not producing any value of monetary kind or value of any kind to your business. In fact, it's costing you. So why do you keep doing that? And I have been into lots of businesses, and even in my own, And I haven't, until somebody sat me down and given me a good talking to or made me do this, realized, or they haven't realized who I've been consulting for, that is a dog product. And actually, we thought it was a cash cow. But when you look at the analytics, like the cost to produce it, the value per customer, the profit of what it's bringing you, you might just go, that's not even a question mark. That's a dog. And it could even be a process. We often have conversations internally about why do we keep doing that thing there that takes 50 different steps and it means a slowness of delivery? And aren't there some dogs in that process that we could just take out and shoot? We don't need them. And there wouldn't be a real threat to the business if we just lost those things in our portfolio. So that some of these tools are quite good because they're quite visceral when you think about them in the terms of the things that you're thinking, like cash cows and dogs.
But I 100% agree with that, and there will be a lot of things that people do that they actually do these things that
Without thinking about it.
the tools don't, without thinking about it.
Yeah.
When you then analyze the tools, you can actually think, do you know
Why
what?
would you do that?
I actually do that, and
Yeah.
I might not have put it in those words, but I actually do that thing, and it's affirmation of the fact that some of the things you
Spot on.
do are actually sat there as well, and that's a really good example using the BCG matrix in terms of that. Absolutely.
I mean, BCG themselves, Boston Consulting Group, have made billions off this one matrix, right? And they will still convince you that if you're a big business, you need them to come in to do this for you. The reality is, it's a bit Emperor's New Clothes. It's such a simple tool when you understand it. You do not need them. And I've been sat in businesses where there's been a ton of BCG people sat there basically telling us internal employees what we already knew with the dogs. It's just our management teams wouldn't listen to us about it. But if they did that job, hey, they had a positive benefit in that. But they are really quite simple. And as Mark says, you are probably in your mind at 4 o'clock in the morning, if you're like me, you're one of those people that's thinking about things rather than sleeping, because they're just on your
it's
mind.
it's 3 o'clock in the morning for me.
Whatever time of day it is that you're
But
doing that.
Carly, with the hours difference, it works, doesn't it?
But also, no joke about it. I'm 50. I'm a menopausal female. We're up several times during the night with hot sweats and everything else. So it can sometimes be good thinking time. And the advice is don't doom scroll. My menopause nurse said actually get up and do something else other than that. So I get up and I write notes and I think about strategies. And my notes function on my iPhone is weird because it's shopping lists and entire business strategies. But you can do this in your everyday life and you won't be giving yourself credit for it. But that analysis of your business, where it is now, what are the constituent parts doing for me and for my business? Are they working properly? Are they at risk of some wider factor or my own issues or the internal strengths and weaknesses? Are there opportunities that I'm not harnessing? What position do I have to get in to harness those opportunities? Are those opportunities even for me? I can see a gap in the market, but I either want to fill it, and or will I attract more risk trying to fill it and more cost? All of these questions, this navel gazing is good for you. You can overthink things.
Can I add one thing now? Because um, when we're thinking, we need to think life work balance. We
Yeah.
get caught up with work life balance, but life work balance. And at the age of 66, being part of a mashup, yeah, is really good. And in an effort to preserve my life work balance, can I remind people that Chelsea Arsenal kick off at
I,
8 p.m.
I'd forgotten about that. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I will let you all go. I get very passionate about this subject, so sorry, I do waffle on even more so than I normally do on this subject. I did just pop into the chat. If you're a DIA member, um, if you ever want to book in, it's not a formal service we market exclusively, but we will start communicating more about how you access this. But for the time being, you can drop help@driving.org or support@driving.org a line. If you want to book in a one-on-one session with any of us, it's almost like pick your favorite player in the game, whoever you think you will gel with and be comfortable talking about your baby, please do so. And it's, we'll try and schedule something in. You're busy people, so we'll try and schedule something in that works for you, probably on Zoom. But spending an hour 2 hours with somebody who understands your world or has the ability to get up to speed on it and ask you some searching questions to make you think rather than them thinking for you, but can bring some experience to bear or some ideas of how you can develop your business and get things out of your business that are more valuable than even money, as in time back for yourself or with your families, then book that in. I'm particularly excited about doing that kind of thing. I really enjoy looking at other people's businesses and helping them. I know Mark and Graham do, and they've got their specialisms given their backgrounds as well. But please take advantage of that service because it's a lonely old industry in many ways. And there's a lot of stuff that can be helpful on things like Facebook forums and chats, and that does a good service in that respect as well. But sometimes you need that one-on-one thing, and particularly from people who've actually got the experience and expertise in those areas as well. And if what I always say as well is a good advisor knows the limits of their capability of advice and they'll pass you on to another good advisor. If it's an area that we're not feeling we're the biggest expert in, we will always tell you and say, actually, it's not me. I'm going to pass you on to somebody else and go and speak to these people. So it's just getting that first step. But that's a service that we're going to formalise and offer more regularly. We'll be doing it in bits and bats when people have asked us to, but not really pushed it. And it's a free service that we offer to the IA members. And please believe that anything you discuss with us will be kept entirely confidential. So you can have that proper open kimono conversation about what's worrying you about your business or what you think the opportunity is, and not feel that somebody's going to come in and steal that idea and run with it on your behalf. So take advantage of that service if it's for you, or if you just want somebody to walk you through in more detail some of the stuff that we've been talking about tonight. But that's it, folks, because I'm conscious that football is very important to some people, not me. And I will let you go. Food is important to me, and I'm conscious that we all want to have some dinner if we haven't had it already.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you all very much indeed for joining.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us again.
Cheers.
See you later.
And Chris, we'll let you up back on the panel soon so you can stop existing in the chat and exist in the actual reality. Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.